Good evening. My name is Patrick Sperlein. I live in Apex, North Carolina. From 1996 to 1999, I was a member of the Echeconnee Lodge, number 358, in the Central Georgia Council. This is the lodge where I went through my ordeal, did my brotherhood, and kept my vigil. And what we're going to talk about today are the flaps and some of the patches of the Echeconnee Lodge. To give a brief history, the Echeconnee Lodge was founded in 1947 and is chartered to the Central Georgia Council. Their totem is the white-tailed deer. Now, this is a lodge that has been involved in nearly every section realignment since the BSA moved to the four-region structure, and actually had a period of time where they did not host the section conclave from 1990 to 2012. Currently, they're in the section SR9, are going to be the host of the 2021 SR9 Indian Winter and the 2022 SR9 Conclave. Echeconnee means Deer Trap Creek in the language of the Creek Indians, which is the tribe that is native to Central Georgia. This is a tribe that created a good deal of pottery and did a lot of trading there in Central Georgia along the different rivers that flow throughout that area. And so finding pottery shards is very common in Central Georgia. The one pictured here is a complicated stamped piece of pottery. And the design in this piece of pottery is actually the design used in a number of the Echeconnee flaps and patches that they've put out. As we talk about flaps, there are really three eras of flaps. You have your flaps before 1990, your flaps between 1990 and 2010, and then things from 2010 and beyond. So first we'll go with the pre-1990 flaps. The S1 flap was issued in 1952. It's there in the top left corner and is distinguishable because it does not have a lodge number on it. The S2 in the top right has a silver atlatl that the Native American is holding. With S3, they moved back to yellow and kept it that way for a while. Here we have pictured the S4 in the middle, the S5 in the bottom left, and the S6 in the bottom right. One thing with the Echeconnee flaps during this time period is that they used a cut edge flap. Really one of the things that makes these flaps distinguishable from a number of other lodges that are out there. You can tell the different issues by the way, by the relationship of the point of the spear to the Indian mound in the background. Sometimes it is on top of the yellow building, sometimes it's above it. Also with the lodge name, it floats up and down through the different issues. And so that's how you can tell, the difference between the S4 and the S6 and so forth and so on. The S7 in the top left was the first time that the lodge issued a narrow-edged flap. This black-bordered flap was actually issued for the lodge's 25th anniversary in 1972. The S8 issue, which came next, was the first time that the fleur-de-lis appeared in the Echeconnee flaps and can be seen in the bottom point of the flap, pretty much where it will stay until we get into the 1990s, where it will then start to move around a little bit. The S10 is the first time you have a solid fleur-de-lis. And then the wonderful S11, which is lovingly referred to as the mistake flap, has a 50 right in the middle of the flap and was issued in 1989. Unfortunately, there was nothing going on in 1989 in either the Echeconnee Lodge, Central Georgia Council, or the Order of the Arrow, where it was the 50th anniversary of anything. So it makes for a good conversation piece. As we move into this next section, we start to see more opportunities for the lodge to celebrate special occasions, and they will actually issue flaps to commemorate more of these occasions, and they move the fleur-de-lis out of the point of the flap into the background, which we'll see with the S19. Here are those special edition flaps that the lodge put out. The S12 for the OA's 75th anniversary in 1990. In the middle, the S15 for the Central Georgia Council's 75th anniversary. And that flap was actually designed and marketed not to go onto the uniform, but to go onto the flap of the red wool jacket. In the top right, we have the S18, which is the lodge's 50th anniversary in 1997. The bottom left, the S27, celebrating Scouting's 100th anniversary and the lodge's 60th anniversary. And then in the bottom right, the S32, denoting the BSA's 100th anniversary. This flap is also interesting because it is the last time that you will see the Native American with the atlatl on an Echeconnee flap. The S33 moved to a new design because we got to the point where the BSA changed their requirements about what could be on a flap. Here are the NOAC issues during this period. The 2004 in the top left, using that same design that the lodge had used for the council's 75th anniversary. The NOAC 2006 flap, the gold border. And then they put out 2 flaps in 2009, a white Mylar and a red bordered flap. And during this time period, they also issued 2 flaps for the National Jamboree, the 2005 and the 2010 National Jamborees. These are some of the standard flaps from that era. The S-17, one of the last flaps where you're going to see the fleur-de-lis down in the bottom point of the flap. This flap came out around 1996. With the S-18, seen to the right of it, the fleur-de-lis is now ghosted in the background in the sky. It moved there initially with the 50th anniversary flap, and the Lodge liked it so much that they moved the fleur-de-lis there. You see next to it, though, the S-20. The S-20 was actually created before the S-19, but the Lodge had ordered a cut-edge flap, and this black mirrored edge flap showed up. Instead of getting rid of the flaps, instead of just sending them back to the manufacturer, they kept them. They put them on the hats for the 1998 NOAC, gave them to the delegates there, then sold them as Lodge flaps afterwards. But around 2001, actually issued them as flaps for wear in time for the 2001 National Jamboree. After this point, you get into the Lodge having some fun with the colors that they use to denote the Lodge number. You'll see with the S-21, the Lodge number is ghosted. The S-22 in the middle, they use a yellow number there. What you don't see is the S-25, which actually does not have the Lodge number on the flap. The S-25 is also unique because it is the last time that you will have a standard issued cut edge flap. The S-28 and 29, they have the ghosted numbers there in the background, and they're distinguishable because of the inner border there, the S-28 with a white inner border and the S-29 with the red inner border. The S-29 was the last standard issue that the Lodge made before 2010. The S-32 was the last one with the Native American and the atlatl. Now we move into more of the modern era. We're going to see a brand new design come out for Echeconnee flaps, moving from the Native American with the atlatl to focusing more on the actual totem of the Lodge. This is the S-34, which was the new design of the Echeconnee Lodge, here with the deer standing in the creek with a sunrise in the back to show the dawn of a new design. Here, the fleur-de-lis is not in the point of the flap, but is ghosted onto the deer, and the Lodge number is ghosted into the trees in the background. And this is the new standard set. It's a 4-season set. There is a spring, a summer, a fall, and a winter flap. And members can wear any flap that they like. There we do have the fleur-de-lis pinned back down to the bottom of the flap. The Lodge number is still ghosted, as are the 3 Ws, but the Lodge name is visible in the top of the flap. These are the 2 flaps put out in 2012. The gold bordered one denoting being home of the 2012 SR9 Section Chief, the one on the right denoting being the host of the 2012 SR9 Conclave. With the Section Chief patch, the fleur-de-lis is there in the bottom of the flap. With the Section Host flap, it is again ghosted into the deer. Beginning with the 2013 National Jamboree, the Lodge began to make some ghosted flaps. They've done this for the 2013 and 2017 National Jamborees. They've done razors for 2015, 2018, and 2020 NOAC. They did a ghosted flap for the 2020 Momentum event, and then have done a breast cancer awareness flap as well. Each of these follows their own pattern. With the National Jamboree flaps, you have the contrasting deer and then the contrasting wording for the event, but the Lodge number, the Lodge name, and the fleur-de-lis are all ghosted into the flap. The number and the name being in the same positions where they would be on a typical flap, and the fleur-de-lis being in the point of the flap. With the NOAC sets and the Momentum flap, you have the year and the event on the sides of the patch in the contrasting color, the deer in a contrasting color, and the fleur-de-lis in a contrasting color, while still ghosting the W's and the Lodge number. With the breast cancer awareness flap, the only piece that's contrasting is the deer. The Lodge name, the number, the W's, and the fleur-de-lis are all ghosted. The first 2-piece set came out for the 2012 NOAC. Here we have both their black bordered trader and their silver mylar bordered delegate. These were the first 2-piece flaps that came out, and the Lodge began to make these 2-piece flaps for NOACs after that point. They would put out both a trader issue and a delegate issue. They did put out one other 2-piece set as well that did not correspond to a NOAC, but rather one for OA High Adventure to help with sending youth from the Lodge to some of the OA High Adventure opportunities that are out there. For the 2015 NOAC, the Lodge made their first F issue, their first not fully embroidered flap. So this is the F1 with the red border and the F2 with the yellow. With this NOAC, the Lodge also picked up a tradition that the Central Georgia Council had used for a number of years. With the Central Georgia Council's JSPs, they would issue a red bordered JSP to all of the youth attending the National Jamboree and a yellow bordered JSP to the adults attending the National Jamboree. Lodge picked up that color pattern, used the red border for their trading set and the yellow border for their delegates. They used that same color pattern again in 2018, but went back to a fully embroidered. With the X issue patches, your odd shapes, very early on, pre-2010, there were very few issues. The Lodge Cook Crew patch, which the X2 had the old MGM Indian head logo on it. And then after 1998, they changed that patch to reflect the new OA emblem with the red arrowhead on there. But after 2010, you start to see more. They redid the Vigil patch. They put out an all event pass. This is an example of the X1B, the Echeconnee Vigil patch. This one happens to be mine. And so the Lodge would give those to their Vigil class each year. Here we have a few of the patches that came out as part of the Echeconnee Lodge hosting the 2012 SR9 conclave. And we have the 4-piece camp improvement set. The first 3 given for hours of service given by a person in preparation for that event, 2,500 patch being for the total number of hours donated by the Lodge to improve Camp Benjamin Hawkins in preparation for that conclave. The last set of patches that we'll talk about are the pie-shaped issues. There are 8 pie-shaped issues, and they split very nicely. 4 of them have fleur-de-lis, 4 of them do not. Here we have the dance team, ceremonies team, and the lingam mat patches. All of these are earned patches in the Echeconnee Lodge. They all have that same pottery border on the outside. The ceremonies team in the top right has been issued twice. There is a P2 and a P5, and the only distinguishable characteristic between those two is the ghosted fleur-de-lis in the light green grass on the P5. The P2 was issued before a fleur-de-lis was required. It's the same thing with the dance team patch on the left. Issue P4 is the one that you see there. There is no fleur-de-lis on that patch. It was redone in 1999 or 2000 and had to have a fleur-de-lis, and it is ghost in nearly the same places you see on the ceremonies team patch on that P5. The P6 for a lingam mat, it's the only time it was ever created, so it does have a fleur-de-lis on it. We then have P1, P3, and P8. All of these were designed to go onto the Lodge neckerchief, which is blue with a green border. The example here is the P3, and the way to distinguish the P1, the P3, and the P8 has to do with the lettering of the Lodge number and the 3 Ws. The P1 has yellow letters with a red outline on them. The P3, as is seen here, has all yellow lettering. The P8 has red lettering and a fleur-de-lis because it was issued in 2000. This really concludes our review of the patches that have been issued by the Echeconnee Lodge.